Molly.com.
Hi, everybody. I'm Crystal Haynes. Tonight on Greater Boston, the backlash against Fox Sports host Charissa Thompson, who admitted to making up some of her sideline reports. I'll talk to a pair of critics who worry her comments hurt the reputation of other women in sports journalism. Then a new documentary from Nova shows one family's quest to fill in the gaps of their family tree, broken by slavery. You know, it's hard being a woman in sports journalism. Female reporters, hosts, and commentators face scrutiny over their appearance, work ethic, and knowledge of the game that their male colleagues just don't have to deal with. And now many women in the industry are worried it could get even harder thanks to this.
I've said this before, so I haven't been fired for saying it, but I'll say it again. I would make up the report sometimes because the coach wouldn't come out at halftime, or it was too late. And I was like, I didn't want to screw up the report. So I was like, I'm just going to make this up because first of all, no coach is going to get mad if I say, hey, we need to stop hurting ourselves. We need to be better on third down. We need to stop turning the ball
Pressure
over.
the quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. and do a better job of getting off the field. Like, they're not going to correct me on that.
Right.
So I'm like, it's fine. I'll just make up the report.
Well, that was Fox Sports host Charissa Thompson talking about her time as an NFL sideline reporter. Now, she has since put out a statement saying in part, quote, working in media, I understand how important words are, and I chose the wrong words to describe this situation. I'm sorry. I have never lied about anything or been unethical during my time as a sports broadcaster. Well, joining me now to break all of this down and weighing in are NBC Sports Boston anchor and reporter Trenni Casey, who used to report from the sidelines of the NHL, MLB, and NBA games in Pittsburgh and Milwaukee. And Molly Yanity is a professor and director of the sports journalism graduate program at Quinnipiac University. Welcome, ladies.
Thanks for having us.
So first, I want to start with you, Trenni. I mean, you've been on the sidelines before, right? Like, did it shock you to hear this come out?
It did. And I actually know Charissa. We crossed paths at our time. We both worked for Fox Sports. She's, otherwise a wonderful person. I know she's a hard worker. And listen, if she would have just said, when I was in my 20s, I was under pressure. I had a lot of eyes on me. I didn't have much training, which I think was all true. I wasn't necessarily qualified for the job that I had at the time. And I did this, and I would never do it again. And I'm ashamed and embarrassed that I did this. I think we'd be having a different conversation. I think the biggest issue here is her flippancy about it. I mean, right off the bat, when she's asked the question, she says, oh, I've never been fired for this before. And I've said it, so I'm going to say it again. I used to make things up. That damages the credibility of every woman who has worked, their behinds off to get a job in sports media. And I know some women just this weekend had coaches and players say something to them and ask, oh, are you going to make something up that I said, or are you going to report what I tell you?
And that's obviously the danger, Molly, when you're talking about ethics in journalism first and foremost, and in the sports arena.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and Trenni just, she made a really good point there that, maybe just owning up to it instead of doubling down. The apology really made me cringe as well. When she's like, I never lied about anything. Okay, it's, maybe an omission, but not a lie. But when she said that she hadn't done anything unethical, that is the definition of unethical, is making this up. Even if it might be possibly true, it still didn't come from the coaches or the players. And that is what fans expect of a sideline reporter. Is that they're getting information that nobody else in the moment can get. And if we just make it up or use cliches to describe what we think the coach might have said, that's incredibly unethical. And it's false. It's when I first saw this, I was like, wait a second. She said this again, or said this before. And I went and looked back, and it was actually an interview or a podcast with Aaron Andrews, where Aaron said, oh yeah, I've done the same thing. And my head kind of exploded. I mean, take us out of sports journalism and just in journalism, the mainstream the people who are consuming media are looking at us already with kind of some skepticism and a little side eye there, and throwing that out there. No, it has to be true. It has to be real. Why are they there if not for that? And all the hard work that goes into landing one of these, particularly on-air jobs, is really undermined by these two stars of the field making comments like that.
And Trenni, it wasn't that long ago that women weren't even allowed in the locker rooms because it was going to be quote unquote a distraction. And there's so many steps that had to be overcome so that you had the respect that women sportscasters had the respect to be able to be on the sidelines, to build these relationships with coaches and players, only to have, as you both mentioned, and is something that I glean, this flip response about making things up.
Yeah, it's really disappointing because also sideline reporting for many women, including myself, was a step up in the world. And it was a way to gain some traction in the industry. You don't see a lot of women as play-by-play voices. You don't see a lot of women as analysts. And even women like, you turn on the TV on an NFL Sunday, and who do you see hosting the big NFL shows? With the exception of ESPN, it's all men again. And so those are really difficult roles to get into. And Samantha Ponder, who is the host of ESPN's NFL Game Day, she started as a sideline reporter. I started as a sideline reporter. That's the way that a lot of us get our foot in the door, maybe get some national exposure in order to be exposed to bigger and better jobs. And it's just really disappointing. And I can say for a fact, it never even crossed my mind. And there were times guys wouldn't talk to me, players, coaches wouldn't talk to me. It never crossed my mind to make something up. Like that never was even a thought that I would even entertain. And I can speak, I think, on behalf of a lot of sideline reporters. This really hurt them because it really, again, put their credibility into question, because a lot of people, because it's how a lot of women get their start in the industry, they see sideline reporters as just an accessory, not a real necessity of the game. And so this just further diminishes that role.
That's sure. We have a tweet from, in reply to ESPN sideline reporter Lisa Salters. I mean, you all have seen all of these tweets in the social media and things like that, who says that she was shocked and disappointed and disgusted by Thompson's comments. Quote, "So if the coaches actively dislike the interviews and the fans are wholly indifferent, WTF are sideline reporters good for? Box checking, that's what. All Thompson did was remind everyone how unnecessary the role is to begin with." And another reply to that same Lisa Salters tweet goes like this. "You were hired as eye candy for men playing sports, nothing more. Nice angle to try and justify your income and job, but literally no one listens to any sideline reporter. That's bathroom break time." So this type of backlash, Molly, is probably expected because there are a lot of people who do not respect female sideline reporters.
Or women in sports.
Or women in sports, you're right.
And those attitudes right there just show that. Those are really disappointing to see. And of course, any female, particularly those public-facing, see these all the time and have developed really tough skin to deal with it. Now, I'm in a unique position, and I spent 15 years as a sports writer on the West Coast. I am now, in a position where when young women, particularly those in sports, come through, almost all of them who are in broadcast say, I want to be a sideline reporter. And they say that because those, as Trenni said, those are the positions that are available. And on one hand, and I don't mean this in any way offensive, and you say that and you're on TV and immediately it's like, but when someone on Twitter blasts off about eye candy or whatever, typically these roles are going to women who have traditional good looks. And when I saw this, when I first saw it, and it was funny, a former student texted me with what was, and I was like, can you believe this? The first people I thought of were the traditionally great looking women who had worked their butt off and have had to do it, twice as hard because they know that people are going to say, I only got here because I look good. And then on the other side of it, I've had to work twice as hard, right? I mean, there's just a no-win situation for for that woman. And this comes out. And the thing is that so many who are making the decisions in sports media it is an entertainment field. We know that. And we could sit and have an argument over, is anything that we're seeing on a Monday Night Football broadcast journalism, or is it just entertainment? We could have that argument. But we expect, as the audience, we expect what we're hearing from these people, whether they're in the booth, on the sideline, to be factual. And Charissa did a disservice to her colleagues and the people that she works with and around and who follow in her footsteps. I think of a young woman who was at Ohio University when I was getting my PhD there, Allie LaForce. And Allie has done, she was hustling around with the camera and doing interviews and, just working so incredibly hard. And she was also like a Miss Teen Ohio at one point. And all I could think of is this undermines her and people in her role more than anything, because you're already in this situation where no matter what you're doing, you're going to take it from one end or the other, right? You're going to take it from, oh, well, you only got here because you're good looking, or, you don't really know what you're talking about. It's just never enough. And so you see this stuff on social media and I'm like, okay, here's the thing. People in power who are putting these broadcasts together have to think of what it is they really want out of the people that they're hiring. If we're, because to my knowledge still, neither Fox nor Amazon has given a statement about what she said, right, about what Charissa said. And, so what is it? What is the expectation from them?
And by her account, apparently she's disclosed this information. She's talked about it before, even being hired by by Fox and Amazon as well. So presumably they knew that this was happening before. And I think, Trenni, to your point earlier, was like, had she just said, I made some mistakes when I was younger that I learned from, I think, again, this would be a very different conversation. I am thoughtful, though. How do you come back from that when you still have to deal with coaches and you still have to deal with players and you have doubled down on your position that you made up stories and you're really not that sorry about it?
Yeah, I am curious, Crystal, whether or not Fox, from time to time, right now, Carissa's role is she hosts the pre-game show on Fox. I think it runs locally from 11 to noon in the Boston area. But every once in a while, she does do sit-down interviews with players and coaches. Do they remove her from that role when the season ends? I don't know what her contract status is. Do they use this as leverage to say, you know what, we let it skate during the season. We didn't want to make a big deal out of it, but we're going to part ways. I'm not sure if she has felt the entire blowback from this yet. But from what I understand this weekend on the broadcast, she tosses in game. She'll toss to highlights and then toss back to play-by-play crews who were on site at the games. And they were going out of their way to say, wow, you're such a great broadcaster, CT. Thanks so much for everything. They're bending over backwards to try and raise her credibility, which means Fox knows that her credibility has been harmed. So the question is, has it been harmed enough for them to make a change? I'm not sure.
How hard is it for folks who don't know what it's like being a sideline reporter? How hard is it to build these relationships?
It's really difficult. Yeah. And it's extra difficult when you are a female because, a lot of relationships are built, in locker rooms, in clubhouses, but also in social settings. So you may go to a charity event, or maybe you are at an off-season event and everybody's hanging out at a bar, or you exchange a phone number. I mean, that's the way a lot of relationships are built. You go to somebody's locker, you talk to them, you ask them for your phone number. But the problem is when you're a female and you ask a player or a coach for their phone number, it can still be misinterpreted. I was always very hesitant to give my personal number out because there were some guys who took advantage of that, who would text me at all hours of the night and ask me, to go on dates or come to their hotel room and watch a movie as though I was born yesterday. So it's increasingly difficult as a female to forge those bonds that the male reporters, I think, just don't have that stigma attached, that maybe they're looking for something more than just a professional relationship. So you have to really gain their trust, and you have to make sure that they know that you are there to do a job, which means, at least for me, it always meant dressing more conservatively than, maybe I even wanted to, right? Like, trying to look like a nun so that no one would think I was in there for the wrong reason. When you talk to guys, make it very clear this is for business only. Can I contact you? You're a free agent this offseason. It's really hard. It takes work. You can do it. It's obviously has been done. Nina Kimes comes to mind. Diana Russini comes to mind. I mean, these are reporters who work in NFL locker rooms day in and day out and have the respect of those players and former players. But that was hard won. It took them a long time to get to that point. And you unfortunately feel the trickle-down effect of the women who don't approach the job in the same way.
Well, I don't envy Charissa if she's ever have to go up against, say, Bill Belichick in an interview or something like that. Yeah. That'd be something to see. All right, Trenni Casey and Molly Yanity, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, websites like Ancestry and 23andMe have opened up the door for millions of us to trace our family's lineage. But for descendants of slaves in America, that family tree can be much harder to grow. A lack of records can leave major gaps in time and lineage. The quest to close those gaps is a focus of a new Nova documentary that follows filmmaker Byron Hurt and his extended family on their heritage journey to learn more about their great-great-great-grandparents, Lee and Liza Hurt.
For years, our family has relied on our reunions to help build out our family tree. But so much of our older history is largely unknown. Before the family reunions began, our tree looked something like this: a handwritten document created by my great-great-uncle, B.B. Hurt, one of Lee and Liza's sons.
So the film is called Lee and Liza's Family Tree, and Byron Hurt joins me now to share more along with his cousin, Renard Rogers. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you for having us.
So first, I want to ask you, Byron, talk to me about what that process was like in trying to collect all of these documents, because I know it's probably extremely difficult.
Well, I have to say that my cousins, Renard and Jandra, and the Ancestry team, the Ancestry Committee that was created by our first woman president, Anitra Hurt, did most of the work. They did the lion's share of the work, doing the research, looking through historical documents, and then eventually the DNA came into play. I was there to document the journey and the process and to tell the story the best way that I could. And I'm really glad and grateful that Nova gave me the opportunity to do that.
So, Renard, tell me, where did you start? Because I imagine it probably seemed like a daunting task in the beginning.
It was definitely a daunting task, and thanks for having us, Crystal. And again, we have been doing family reunions for 37 years. Our 38th year will come up in 2024. So we had a little bit of history, but it was really focused on the 14 kids of Lee and Liza. Every time we had a family reunion, we'd learn more about their kids, but we knew nothing about them. They're our patriarch and matriarch of the family. And so what we started to do on our last reunion in, I don't remember which reunion we were at. I think it was New Jersey, the one that Byron hosted. We decided that we needed to go back further and learn more about Lee and Liza. And again, our last name is Hurt. So we didn't know anything about the Hurt side. That was really where the focus was initially. But we knew even less about Eliza Waller. We'll call the Hurt Waller family reunion. So we wanted to find out more about her too. So that's what started the journey. We created an ancestry committee, and that ancestry committee is made up of 8 of us, including myself and my cousin Jandra and several of other family members that were interested in this. And that's what started the journey.
You know, I'm from a big family myself, and I know that there are lots of family stories that some of them are myth and some of them are true. Did any of those family stories guide you to, evidence-based, accounts that you were able to put together in this documentary and in your family's history?
Interesting on.
True.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Byron.
Well, no, I'm sorry, Renard. So I wanted to say that, for many years, there's been a myth that our patriarch owned land. And this was mostly through oral history in our family. And we discovered through the process that Lee Hurt, in fact, did own land by the time that he died. Now, he eventually lost that land due to taxes, unpaid taxes, but he wasn't a landowner. This is someone who was born into slavery in 1863 and did not know how to read or write for a good portion of his life, and eventually owned his own land and had his family members living on that land for many years.
Renard, what were you going to say? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say on that, besides that, on Lee, that was some of him owning land was a big find for us. And we thought if we could find out how he got that land, that we could find out more about where he came from. And as you'll see in the film, if we were able to do that, but the bottom line is that was one of the things and one of the hints that we used, and when we did some of our research. The other things that we heard that we knew he was mulatto, at least that was and that's a mixed race. We wanted to confirm that throughout throughout our research. We found in the census reports that's what it said, but we were trying to go there. We've heard about him coming in on a mule or a horse or a bus or a train to Eatonton, Georgia. And we wanted to find out more about that. How did he get here? And that's really what started this whole process relative to Lee. We knew nothing about how our Hurt name came about or anything like that.
Well, like so many African-American families in this country, I know that it can be difficult to track down these documents, to really connect the dots here. We have a clip from the documentary talking about why it's so difficult to trace Black lineage.
I think at this point, we've exhausted a lot of the public records. That's the challenge. So we have to turn to DNA.
Given our history of ruptured families, it's not surprising that many Black folks are turning to DNA to try to put the pieces of our families back together. Slavers captured and brought Africans from the west coast of Africa to these shores in America. Lee and Liza's ancestors were likely among them.
And so talk to me a little bit, Byron, in putting together, the video and the pieces of this evidence to make it into, this documentary. Was there anything that surprised you in terms of the discovery that, your family committee was able to come up with?
Well, it was very challenging to put all of the information together, the historical documents, the family photographs, which we make great use of, as well as all of the information that we were learning from the DNA research. And that process was very, very challenging to basically string all of that together to tell a really cohesive story in 1 hour. I think the only surprise is that we couldn't go back further than where we ended up. We're still digging. We're still going to, continue the process of learning. But it's the challenge of going back prior to the Civil War and much earlier than that. That was probably the greatest challenge, because it's a complicated process. It's hard to stitch together all of the information because there's so many different moving parts. In learning about our about Liza was really challenging. Learning about her as well, because we learned that it's really difficult to track down information about Black women at a certain period of time, because their names change, they move. There are a lot of different factors. They were enslaved, right? So they didn't have really well-maintained records and that sort of thing. So that was probably the biggest challenge, going back and learning all of the information that we hope to learn.
Renard, did you find that you would just hit this wall of information, or this wall where you're like, why can't I find anything beyond this?
We hit many, many walls. We brought in as much as we could. DNA evidence helped us track down some of Lee, who we thought were Lee. Lee Hurt's relative. That was a wall that we thought we had gotten far, and we found out that it wasn't the entrance that we thought it was going to lead us to. We hit walls like that throughout. We learned a lot about, I learned personally a lot about that. I thought that many of the slaves took their slave owners' names. I found out that that was only true like half the time. I found out why so many relatives were related to each other. I thought that was kind of, I used to kid my cousins that was a Southern thing, that cousins marry cousins. That's not the case. That was the reality of slaves coming out of slavery and getting to know each other and mixing after they got. So that was really very interesting. It was very enlightening, the whole journey. But we did wind up hitting a lot of walls that we had to get around.
Byron, what do you hope folks take away from your family's story, but most importantly, this journey you take folks on in this documentary?
Well, I know a lot of families are into ancestry research and wanting to learn more about their families. And it's Thanksgiving, we're entering the holidays, and I know a lot of people are going to be gathering with their family members. I hope that they watch the documentary and they start having conversations about their ancestry, where they come from, whether it's oral history that they begin passing on if they haven't done that already, or beginning a more formal search like what our family has done, and really, taking on the challenge of learning more about their families. I hope they're inspired by our family. We have a really organized, really well-structured family. I hope that people, family members, are inspired and motivated to reunite with their families and to, just begin new traditions around their families and family reunions.
Renard, I mean, I can only imagine what your holidays look like, right? Very organized. There's not a detail left uncared for. What messages would you have for other families, especially in this holiday season, to build off of what Byron said?
Yeah, and I think building off of what he said, particularly for Black families, there's so much history here in the United States and America, but there's even more history beyond that if you go beyond Africa. And I'm hoping that, like us, and probably 10 years ago, I wish we would have started this 10, 20 years ago, but now we have different tools. We have online tools, we have DNA. I hope more tools come about because more people are interested in finding out about their family, and particularly Black families going beyond their slave owners, but even beyond that, where they can find out where they actually originate from in Africa.
All right. Well, Renard Rogers and Byron Hurt, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting us.
Lee and Liza's Family Tree premieres tomorrow at 9 o'clock right here on PBS2 and on the PBS app and online at pbs.org/Nova. All right, everybody, that's it for tonight, but come on back tomorrow. I'm Crystal Haynes. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.
I'm Billie Jean.